There comes a moment when fighting with life exhausts you. You've struggled, resisted, argued, and tried to control everything. But life, unmoved by your tantrums, flows its own way. In that still moment when you drop the illusion of control, something profound happens. You do not become weak, you become vast. You don't fall into defeat, you rise into clarity. That is the power of true surrender, not to someone, not to something, but to life itself. Surrender is not submission. Submission is born out of fear, but surrender rises from awareness. When one submits, they break under pressure. When one surrenders, they rise beyond their limitations. Surrender is not weakness, it is the highest form of intelligence that sees life as it is, not as the mind wants it to be. It does not mean to give your power away, it means to stop wasting energy in futile resistance and align with the greater rhythm of existence. The greatest illusion a human being carries is the illusion of control. We believe we can shape life to our liking, yet every breath reminds us that life is not in our command. This desperate urge to control leads to endless anxiety and suffering. The moment you realize that life is far too vast to be dictated by your desires, a deep relief sets in. In that clarity, surrender happens naturally. It is not a decision, but a dissolution of false ownership. The ego trembles at the idea of surrender because its survival depends on separation. It constantly wants to stand apart, to claim identity, to assert I. But surrender shatters this wall. It reveals that what we call self is only a temporary formation within the grand flow of existence. When the boundaries of me and life dissolve, there is no conflict left, only a seamless dance between the inner and the outer. The one who surrenders does not lose themselves, they find what they truly are. When you stop resisting, life starts flowing effortlessly. The mind that once calculated, compared and complained falls silent. You begin to witness the extraordinary intelligence of existence guiding each moment with perfect balance. Letting go does not mean abandoning effort. It means acting without tension. The illusion of control is one of the deepest roots of human suffering. People live under the constant belief that they can shape life according to their limited will. They try to command circumstances, dictate outcomes, and control the flow of events that were never theirs to begin with. This obsession to manipulate everything only tightens the grip of misery. The more you try to control, the more you realize how powerless you actually are. Life is not something you manage, it is something you experience with awareness and grace. When one looks closely, control is nothing but fear wearing the mask of strength. The mind seeks control because it cannot stand uncertainty. It wants guarantees, it wants predictability, it wants life to follow its rules. But existence doesn't move by the laws of your desire, it moves by its own vast intelligence. Every attempt to dominate that flow separates you from the natural harmony of things. The need to control is the mind's desperate attempt to protect its fragile identity, and in that very attempt, it creates suffering. True freedom dawns the moment you see that control is an illusion. Life has never asked for your permission to happen. The wind doesn't blow because you wish it to, and the sun doesn't rise because you command it. When you drop this constant struggle to dictate the script of existence, something inside you loosens. You stop fighting the tide and instead you begin to flow with it. What once seemed like chaos reveals itself as a perfectly synchronized dance. Surrender is not defeat, it is liberation from this endless battle with what is. It is a silent acceptance that life knows far better than you ever will. It does not mean you stop acting, it means your actions are no longer poisoned with resistance. You still participate, but with a clear mind and open heart. You still make choices, but without anxiety over their outcomes. In that stillness, power returns, not the false power of control, but the true power of alignment. The illusion of control dies when awareness is born. When you stop insisting on how life should be, you start seeing it as it truly is. That vision itself brings peace. What you called loss becomes liberation, what you feared as surrender becomes strength. Life, once resisted, now moves through you effortlessly. You become not the controller of existence, but a living expression of its vast intelligence. The ego lives in constant fear of surrender because it survives only through separation. It feeds on the idea that you are an individual entity, distinct and divided from the rest of existence. It thrives by creating endless boundaries of mine and not mine, of this is me and this is not me. The moment you move beyond these illusions, the ego begins to tremble. It knows that once you truly surrender, its dominance will collapse and the mask it has built for years will be torn apart. The ego is not your enemy, but it is a blind servant that believes it is the master. It constantly demands attention, validation and control. It wants to be right, to win, to dominate and to be seen as special. Every time you obey these demands, you strengthen the walls between yourself and existence. The ego doesn't want connection, it wants comparison. It measures worth through conflict and creates suffering through separation. The fear of surrender comes from its deep insecurity that without control, it will cease to exist. When surrender begins, the ego resists with all its might. It will create stories of weakness, convince you that surrender is defeat and tell you that without it you are nothing. But in truth, the ego's death is not your end, it is your beginning. The destruction of the false self is the birth of the real one. What dies in surrender is illusion, what remains is pure consciousness, untouched and unshaken. The ego calls this annihilation, but the awakened see it as liberation. In surrender, boundaries dissolve like mist before the sun. There is no longer a you striving to survive against the world, there is only life expressing itself through you. Life carries a profound intelligence that no human mind can ever fully grasp. Every leaf that grows, every breath that sustains, every heartbeat that continues without instruction is guided by an invisible harmony. This intelligence does not come from thought, it flows from the very source of existence. Yet, in arrogance, the human mind believes it knows better. It interferes, calculates and manipulates, thinking it can outsmart the natural order. In doing so, it loses touch with the effortless rhythm that sustains life itself. The mind's interference creates friction where none is needed. It questions, doubts and resists what is already functioning perfectly. You do not control the beating of your heart, yet it never forgets its rhythm. You do not manage the rising of the sun, yet it never fails to appear. When you truly observe this, you begin to see how much life happens without your involvement. The mind's constant attempt to dominate this natural intelligence is the very reason it suffers. When interference stops, life starts to flow as it was meant to. What once felt chaotic now reveals its purpose. Events align, people appear, and paths open in ways that logic cannot predict. The struggle ends not because everything becomes easy, but because you stop fighting the way things are. You begin to act with the current instead of against it. This alignment is not passivity, it is conscious participation in the vast orchestration of existence. Letting go is not an act of defeat, but an act of immense power. It is the moment when the noise of struggle ceases and clarity emerges. People often confuse letting go with weakness because the mind believes control equals strength. But real strength lies in knowing when to release what no longer serves your growth, to hold on to what is decaying, what is gone, or what was never meant to stay is to invite endless pain. Letting go is not abandoning life, it is trusting that life knows how to move forward without your constant interference. Giving up comes from despair, from the hopeless belief that nothing matters. It is born from frustration and exhaustion where the spirit collapses under pressure. Letting go, on the other hand, is an awakening. It comes from awareness, not defeat. When you let go, you are not escaping, you are seeing. You realize that clinging only multiplies suffering and that life cannot be controlled by your desires. What you release with understanding no longer chains you. What you resist continues to imprison you. The mind is addicted to attachment. It wants to possess, to claim, to hold on to things that were never truly yours. It attaches itself to people, outcomes, identities and emotions, mistaking them for stability. Yet everything in existence is in motion, and to cling to the transient is to invite pain. The art of letting go is the art of recognizing impermanence. It is not a rejection of what was, but a graceful acceptance of change. When you let things move as they must, life regains its natural balance. Letting go opens the door to inner stillness. It clears the noise of fear, regret and longing that clouds perception. In that silence, the heart becomes light and the mind becomes clear. The energy that was once trapped in resistance becomes available for creation and growth. You stop reacting to life and start responding with awareness. You no longer carry the weight of the past, nor the anxiety of the future. You stand firmly in the present, untouched by what comes or goes. When you let go, you begin to live. You see that nothing was ever truly lost, only transformed. You understand that the flow of existence is not against you, it is constantly renewing you. To let go is to trust that life's unfolding has a wisdom beyond your plans. It is to walk without fear, love without attachment, and act without expectation. In that space, you find peace, not because life becomes perfect, but because you stop demanding it to be anything other than what it is. Peace does not come through control, it comes when the inner war finally ends. The constant battle between what is and what should be drains the very essence of life. The human mind has been trained to fight everything, to fight emotions, circumstances, people, even its own thoughts. This endless resistance creates inner chaos, and that chaos becomes the lens through which we see the world. The moment surrender happens, that battle collapses. There is no longer an enemy, only an understanding. Peace is not created, it is revealed when the noise of conflict subsides. In surrender, reaction turns into response. Reaction is born from unconsciousness, from the urge to defend the false identity of self. It arises instantly without awareness and only deepens the suffering. But a response comes from clarity. When the mind is not clouded by anger or fear, actions become measured, graceful and aligned with reality. Surrender allows this transformation. You stop wasting energy fighting shadows and start acting from a space of truth. Acceptance is not passivity, it is the deepest act of strength. To accept means to look at life exactly as it is, without denial, resistance or judgment. The mind always wants to edit reality, to rearrange it according to its comfort. It keeps saying, this should not have happened, or I deserve something better. But life does not move according to your preferences, it moves according to its own vast intelligence. The refusal to accept what is only creates pain, while acceptance opens the door to peace. What you face fully, you rise above. What you resist, you remain trapped within. True acceptance does not mean liking everything that happens. It means recognizing that whatever is before you is already real. No amount of anger or regret can undo a moment that has already unfolded. When you accept something deeply, your energy shifts from reaction to response. You stop fighting the fact of the moment and begin to see what can actually be done. Acceptance transforms confusion into clarity, weakness into strength, and pain into wisdom. It is not resignation, it is conscious acknowledgement of reality. The human mind believes acceptance will make it powerless, but the opposite is true. When you resist, your vision narrows and you act blindly out of fear or frustration. But when you accept, you see the whole picture. You become capable of intelligent action, unclouded by emotion. Acceptance gives you the space to move with awareness rather than desperation. It does not stop you from changing what must be changed. It only removes the poison of resistance that blocks clear perception. Acceptance also extends inward. To accept yourself is perhaps the hardest form of surrender. The mind constantly measures, compares and condemns. It calls itself not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough. But what you reject in yourself only grows stronger in the shadows. When you stop waging war against your own being, you begin to heal. You see that you were never broken, only divided by false judgment. The moment self-acceptance dawns, inner harmony returns and strength begins to flow naturally. When you accept life and yourself completely, transformation becomes effortless. What you accept fully, you go beyond. What you see without resistance loses its grip over you. Acceptance does not make you passive, it makes you unshakable. It is not the end of effort, but the beginning of intelligent effort. In that state, even suffering becomes a teacher and every challenge turns into a doorway for growth. To accept is to align with the truth of existence, and the truth always sets you free. To flow with existence is to stop being a separate fragment fighting against the whole. The river never argues with the rocks in its path. It bends, it curves, it moves and still reaches the ocean. In the same way, when one stops resisting life, energy moves without friction. Every situation becomes part of the journey instead of an obstacle. The one who flows does not waste life in conflict, they use every turn, every fall, every rise to move forward. Resistance creates stagnation, while surrender creates movement. When you fight life, you become heavy and rigid. Your energy turns inward, suffocating your growth. Resistance is like building a dam within yourself. Every emotion, thought and experience that you refuse to face piles up until it breaks you from within. Flowing with life means allowing everything its space. Joy and sorrow, gain and loss, clarity and confusion. Nothing is denied, nothing is avoided. In that openness, life finds its natural rhythm again, and what once felt unbearable becomes bearable. True freedom does not come from control, it comes from trust. The more you try to control life, the more it controls you. You become trapped in a cycle of fear, constantly trying to manipulate every outcome to suit your comfort. The one who believes control brings freedom is a prisoner of his own mind. Real freedom begins when you stop trying to force life into your design and allow it to unfold through its own intelligence. To live in trust is to stand fearlessly in the unknown, knowing that existence never makes a mistake. The human mind mistakes control for power. It thinks freedom means doing whatever it wants, whenever it wants. But this kind of freedom only strengthens the chains of desire. The more you obey every impulse, the more enslaved you become. The one who is ruled by craving cannot know freedom. True power is not in dominating circumstances, but in being untouched by them. The one who trusts life moves freely through all conditions because his peace is not borrowed from situations, it comes from within. When surrender happens, trust is born naturally. You begin to see that life has never betrayed you, it has only removed what was false. Every failure, every loss, every change that broke your expectations was a step toward clarity. Trust grows when you realize that existence does not work against you, it works through you. When the need to control fades, a vast ease arises. You stop trying to make things happen and begin to align yourself with what is already happening. That alignment is freedom in its purest form. The one who trusts no longer lives in fear of the future. They do not waste their days predicting or protecting because they have discovered something greater than certainty, presence. Freedom is not about knowing where you are going, it is about being fully alive where you are. Control creates tension because it depends on outcomes. Trust dissolves tension because it rests in being. When you trust life, every moment becomes a teacher and every experience becomes sacred. Freedom born of surrender is not rebellion, it is realization. It is the recognition that nothing in existence can imprison you unless you cling to it. When you no longer resist what is, you stop being. When surrender becomes total, the illusion of separation collapses, the wall between you and life disappears, and what remains is a single, boundless existence moving through countless forms. The idea of being an individual entity fades like mist in sunlight. You no longer experience yourself as a fragment of creation, you experience yourself as the very pulse of creation itself. This is not a belief or philosophy, it is a direct knowing that all boundaries are imagined and that everything you ever called other has always been part of the same whole. The sense of individuality survives only as long as resistance exists. The moment resistance ends, the center that calls itself I dissolves. You do not vanish into emptiness, you expand into infinity. The river does not lose its identity when it merges with the ocean. It becomes the ocean. Similarly, when you surrender, you are no longer confined to the narrow dimensions of the mind. You move beyond body, beyond thought, beyond identity, and enter the vastness that holds all things. What you used to see as life happening around you is now life happening through you. Surrender is not an act, it is a realization. It's the awakening from the arrogance of I know to the wonder of I am. When you stop forcing life to fit your plans, you discover that existence has always carried you in its arms. To surrender is to melt into that embrace, to stop swimming upstream and allow the current of truth to take you home. That is when life stops being a struggle and becomes a sacred flow.